This video features materials protected by the Fair Use Guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners. Copyrighted materials can be fairly used for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Aren't you afraid of dying alone? Now that you're divorced, don't you think that you should find a girlfriend? Or a partner? Or a new spouse, as soon as possible? Do you want to end up alone? Aren't you lonely? These are just a few common fear-based themes used to motivate people to enter a relationship, or stay in a toxic relationship, when taking a solo path might be the better option. Visual Capitalist published a very interesting article titled, "Who Americans Spend Their Time With?" by Avery Koop and Nick Routley. The link to the article can be found in the description box. The article's original data source was taken from a time use survey, and the results were collected by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. The chart provided in the article does a fantastic job illustrating who Americans spend their time with. The data explains how much time Americans choose to spend each day with each selected group as they age. The categories of time spent that were analyzed by the researchers were alone, partner, coworkers, children, family, and friends. The study did not seem to make a differentiation between which gender reported how time was spent, or if that data was available. The writers did not pull that information out of the survey results. When interpreting this information from my perspective, which is one of a divorced, American, single man, in his 40s, who has co-parenting responsibilities, I clearly see that the long-held shaming belief that single men will end up alone and lonely is simply a fear-based idea used to invoke anxiety. That anxiety could cause men in my demographic to make fear-based decisions, which ultimately turn out to be problematic in the long run. Some examples are dating too soon after divorce, moving a single mother and her children into your home quickly after divorce, in an attempt to recreate the family situation you have, quote, unquote, lost, or have the bizarre intention of creating a modern-day Brady Bunch by combining your teenage children and her teenage children in one single family home, rapidly cohabitating and combining finances with someone that you do not really know, quickly marrying a woman without properly vetting her over a long period of time. All bad decisions, and sometimes made by divorced men, so that we don't end up alone and lonely. If you review the chart, the fact of the matter is, based on the data, Americans are more likely to end up spending most of our time alone, starting in our late 30s. On average, this trend continues for the rest of our lives. Going back to the chart, we see that as Americans age, the time spent with a partner ranks second, but time alone still continues to increase as we age. One would think that as we retire from our careers, and our children become adults, we would probably have more time to dedicate to spend with a partner, and therefore less time would be spent alone. However, this is not the case. One key and very interesting point that the data shows is, upon turning 45 years old, the average person spends 309 minutes a day alone. Coming in second place is time spent with children, at 199 minutes per day. As Americans, we're constantly conditioned to think that we should always spend time in group settings or situations, no matter what. For example, I'm a sports fan and enjoy watching events on TV. However, the amount of quote, unquote, psychological programming we receive through commercial advertising aired during American sporting events can be overwhelming. It is so subtle that you might not even recognize it. Until you do. The commercials constantly inundate us with messages that your life is somehow less than, or unfulfilled, if every free minute is not filled with group events, surrounded by the smiling faces of a half-dozen friends and your extended family, all while engaged in super fun activities. Or that you have missed the target on what is considered a fulfilling life, if your life doesn't reflect what is portrayed in commercials. We have to understand that corporations are trying to sell products, and that they have spent millions of dollars researching human motivation, and how to incite consumer behaviors through visual cues. I definitely know that I was influenced to start a family, and jump on the hamster wheel of providing, because of the programming contained in commercials and media, like rhythm and blues music, where there was, and still is, an overt message of, as a man you must get married, have kids, buy a house, and fill the roles of dad and mom, for those 2 or more kids. One caveat that I have to state is that I do own up to my responsibility that I chose to have a family in the past. The article went on to state that by age 55, time spent alone still took the top spot. Could this shift at around age 55 signal the cause, or suggest a correlation, between a rise in time alone, and the uptick in gray divorces? A gray divorce can be described as a divorce involving individuals who are 50 years of age or older. It seems to me that during the time around age 45, couples are pouring themselves into their children and their careers. Maybe the best choice long term would be that couples in their 40s work to solidify their post-children relationship by spending quality time together. Unfortunately, when the couple does finally have the opportunity and time to spend together at around the age of 55, they may quickly realize that they do not know each other, and that they truly enjoy time alone. At that point, it's probably too late. Another interesting fact was that as people get closer to old age, interpreted as age 65 to 75 years old and beyond, they spend even more time alone with a peak alone time of 463 minutes per day. This peaks at age 80 with 477 minutes alone per day. There is also data showing that over time, more Americans are living alone too. I suspect that this is due to the long-term divorce rates and the declining marriage rates as of 2023. Another thing that I really liked about this article was that it explicitly stated that there was no direct correlation between living alone and loneliness. This resonated with me, because I felt the most alone in my entire life, at around the age of 35, when I was in year 5 of a dysfunctional and toxic 7-year marriage. The marriage was in free fall, and spinning out of control. My wife at the time did her best to avoid spending quality one-on-one time as a couple, and would spend as much time as possible with our children, despite the fact that we had family help and were financially stable. In hindsight, that dynamic lines up exactly with the data. She was in her early 30s, so most of her time spent was either alone or with the children. I was in my mid-30s, and most of my time spent was either alone or with the children. Pretty sobering stuff when you logically analyze it and overlay data on top of it. Moving on. Americans are relentlessly conditioned by television commercials, music, movies, and even opinions by mental health professionals that we, as men, will end up alone and lonely. See the article by Dr. Greg Matos, The Rise of Lonely Single Men. All of that must be questioned. The data shows that most Americans will in fact end up alone. However, that does not mean that you must choose a life of loneliness. Honestly, as a Generation X man in my 40s, who is living the lifestyle of a free agent. Shout out to CGA. And also going my own direction, this data confirms that seeking an old school relationship that lasts forever is not a logical or realistic decision. However, having realistic expectations, if you do choose to enter into something, will pay dividends in the long run. The bottom line for men at any age in life, but especially in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, is that we must 1. Develop solo activities and individual hobbies, and 2. Become comfortable traveling alone for pleasure. I'm not saying that you should become an antisocial hermit or recluse. What I am saying is men may have a more favorable outcome if we lean into the facts and accept the realities of modern relationships, dating post-divorce, and the current American culture. Understanding that the likelihood of having a retirement, or life, portrayed in ads, with a long-term wife or girlfriend by your side, and sharing all that life has to offer is unlikely, according to the research data. I'm in my 40s, and I've been divorced for 10 years. Loneliness is not even on the radar, as I have created a life that is filled with the things that I enjoy. I also briefly reflect back to the actual lonely times that occurred during marriage, whenever the quote-unquote programming starts to seep in. This quickly eliminates the self-gaslighting. I think that a lot of men could also benefit by actively combating the programming, and adopting a more realistic view about relationships, and life in general. Potentially, this could reduce the self-inflicted pain and suffering that occurs when unrealistic expectations meet reality. Read the article and let us all know what you think as it applies to your life. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe, as it helps me to keep bringing insights from the solo dolo path.